right? And of course, you have the option of selecting here asynchronous and synchronous. So based on that, I'll show you the flowchart of how content moves. That is very important. So when you do endpoint selection mode synchronous and synchronous, it only checks the criteria if you have any filters or anything when you upload any content, and if it meets the criteria, it will put it in the endpoint, that is externalize it, and if it does not meet, it will put it back into the content database. You'll put it back into the content database. So that is when you have the endpoint selection mode as synchronous and write mode as synchronous. So synchronous. The second option would be when you select the endpoint selection mode as synchronous and endpoint write mode as asynchronous. So ultimately, the synchronous and asynchronous is the same. It's just like so it's just the same, where asynchronous means you're putting everything, any content that is uploaded goes into the system cache, and then it moves to the endpoint. So when you have in the synchronous, and of course synchronous means it will go directly to the endpoint. So when you have the endpoint selection mode as synchronous and endpoint write mode as asynchronous, then what happens is it's at after the system cache level, the criteria is checked before at the first level when you upload any content, and if it meets the criteria, then it puts it in the system cache. So it does not write everything to the system cache. That's the only difference. So it first checks the criteria or the filter conditions, and then puts it into the system cache if it meets it. If it does not, it will go to the content database. Now in the system cache, it will you have the content migrator job that will basically move from the system cache to the actual endpoint. So you have a timer job there here at this point. So that is synchronous and asynchronous, and then the third criteria is the asynchronous mode. So when you select the endpoint selection mode, you can only select asynchronous. So in that mode, anything that you upload first it goes into the system cache, and then when the content migrator job runs, the criteria is, it checks the criteria. If it meets, then it puts it in the endpoint, and if it does not, if it puts it in the content database. So just so notice this asynchronous, and when you have the endpoint write mode, so in asynchronous mode, that it's still this is transparent to the user. So the user does not know anything, right? Because it's still thinking I'm just uploading content. It's just that how the content moves and where it is placed, right? And then how the criteria or the filter condition. So that being said, these are the three different combinations, right? Now, the reason why this is important is you need to know what all options is available for you for filtering out your content which is being externalized. So when you have it in sync and sync mode, right, which is endpoint selection mode and endpoint write mode as sync and sync, you don't get any of these filter conditions. So you can you have the option of promote SharePoint folder names to blob store, promote SharePoint file name to blob store, and use file size. So you only have this condition, file size filter on profile endpoint. You can only have this condition when you do a sync and sync. And rest of the filter conditions are not available. When you do with sync and async, you get a little more options, but again, there are a few options that hierarchical scope is not available, and use filter type on profile endpoint. I can brief about hierarchical scope is, if, say, suppose you don't want at the site collection or the content database or the web application level, right, you just want to externalize a list, then what happens is you need to use hierarchical scope where you can give that list further down, right? So you can drill down or get the scope even further down to a list or library or document library. So that is very important. So you can only get the hierarchical scope when you have async as the ESM or the endpoint selection mode. So all of these filter conditions are met. Now, so promote SharePoint folder name. So what happens is the first option is that whatever your SharePoint folders names are, it will be showing up in the blob store as well. So if you have a site, say test, so it will show up as test, and then the folder name inside the document library as well. So then of course promote file share name. So if you do not have this option, what will happen is it will store it as a GUID, right? So which is not very helpful. That's when you can have the file name underscore, so it will give you the file name underscore v1 or 2, whichever, depending on the versions, and underscore the GUID. So then of course use file size filter is like how much, so if any file that is greater than 10 kilobyte, you can say, okay, I want to externalize it, right? So that is what the third condition is, the filter is, and the file type, right? So you can have the options, okay, I want all PDFs to go out and all documents to go out, docx and Excel documents, and so you can basically give the file extensions that you want to externalize. And then of course use hierarchical scope is for drilling or getting the scope down to further down, like to a document library or something. So this is what is. So let me take you to the show you the so here this is the option when you create a new profile. So you have Synchronous. So when I do Synchronous and I do an endpoint, I select Synchronous, I only get the file size filter, so which is greater or equal to, or you can have everything externalized, right? So if you don't do the filter condition, everything will go out. So all content will go out. So this is the condition. So when you do asynchronous, then you do get options, but you don't have any hierarchical scope out here. Notice this hierarchical scope down, there's nothing there. So it's only the file size, and of course use SharePoint folders in blob store, use SharePoint file name and extensions, file extensions, right? So when you select the second one, automatically this third one is selected because the file extensions also come. So you'll see it's a .pdf and in that endpoint. So so then when you do asynchronous, that's when you do an endpoint, you get this hierarchical scope where actually you have to select something, right? So you can add the scope here. I may have not, okay, I didn't select the content database, right? That's the reason why. Let me select, there you are. So since I didn't select the content database, that's why I didn't get the hierarchical scope. So I can add the scope and basically drill down, say, okay, I want only the list, customized reports, and then do okay. So I just want only the list of customized reports to be externalized, right? So you get all these options. So basically, you get, when you do asynchronous mode, you get everything, all the filter conditions that you can have. So you have file types, and then of course you have you can do the file types that you want to include or exclude. So yeah, so here you can say, okay, docx. I want all docx to be externalized and things like that. So this is how you can have more. So meaning because the thing is, there's a lot of times when customers say, oh, I don't know what file it is, right? So selecting asynchronous mode does give you everything actually. So so if you see here, it gives you all the filter conditions. So it is, the choice is yours, but you need to make a decision as to whether you want sync and or asynchronous profiles, depending on which ones. So whether you wanted the write mode or you wanted the selection mode. So I think that's what covers our discussion on synchronous and asynchronous profiles, as we are right on time on 15 minutes. So now I'll open for questions. So you can give your, if you have any questions, do feel free to enter them so that I can try my best to answer them. Oh, Lon, you have raised your hand, so this. Oh, so synchronous. Say because so the other point I didn't cover was if you have asynchronous, right? You need to have a system cache. So system cache is basically here. So if you've not configured this system cache, it will not allow you to create asynchronous profiles. So it is very important because if you don't have this cache, it will not allow you to create asynchronous profiles. Now it depends on how. So synchronous is basically it bypasses any extra endpoint. It will go to the endpoint directly if it meets a condition, right? So that's what synchronous is. That it does not put everything to the system cache and then to the endpoint. So it's totally by default. It's like synchronous profiles, right? So if people don't know or the clients don't know that yeah, I can have this option as well, which will give me more filter conditions, and you can basically try to make documents like you can have different endpoints saying, okay, anything, all document or Office documents goes in one endpoint, the other PDFs will go into the other endpoint. So you can basically categorize your externalization. So synchronous is by default, which is just, okay, everything will go to the endpoint, right? So that's when storage point does not get any, it just externalizes it. So it's not able to perform any tasks such as any filter conditions or try to rename the file, not rename the file or put the file name or in a folder structure, better folder structure. Otherwise, you just put, okay, based on the folder scheme, so year, month, date, hour, and time. So yeah, definitely. That is easier because that also, if you want to just find a file, right, you can just give the name of the file, right? So otherwise, it'll be difficult for you to understand, to see what exactly, it'll just be in the, so this one is a cache, right? So I'll show you. So it'll just be in this format, right, of 2012, 13, 14. And so if you see here, it'll just be the date, time, year, and all GUIDs. Let me see if, yeah, so it'll be just in the GUID format, right? Whereas if you have an asynchronous profile, it will be named, let me search if it is, so endpoint. I think C products should have products. Yeah, so here, excuse me. So here I have it as asynchronous. So if you see, I know that okay, Anupam test is one, and so there you are. So this is a BLMK file, so not much. So there, the list and basically photos, and it'll give you the name, right? ing underscore. So that's how synchronous will do, right? Asynchronous, sorry. So it'll have the name and a JPG as well. So it's a JPEG file, and not be. It'll not be BLMK because I think it's been deleted or for whatever reason. So that is what the difference between asynchronous and synchronous is. And definitely, I have a lot of clients who, when I told them that option, they have converted it from synchronous to asynchronous because it gives you more meaning for externalizing content. Any other questions? Sure, thanks. You're welcome. All right, so if you do not have any questions, then I guess I will see you in the next presentation on the 21st of August. And yeah, thanks for attending, and any feedback is greatly appreciated.